Hello chums, and welcome to Setups for Simpletons. I've created an entire series dedicated to explaining Gran Turismo 7's quirky and sometimes unforgiving tuning system, but sometimes it's nice to just copy someone else's homework and be done with it. So in this series I will take one car at a time, show a complete setup, and a lap of the Nürburgring for good measure. Disclaimer, if you use my setup it does not mean you're a simpleton. Let's begin! I have had a couple of requests for the Nismo 400R, or maybe it was just the one. Who's keeping track anymore? This is a car which I've never spent much time with, despite having a soft spot for the R33 Skyline. So let's see how far up the Nürburgring leaderboard this 30-year-old car can climb. For the visuals, the 400R has the wide body fitted, along with aftermarket wheels in the standard size. You may be tempted to keep the original wheels, which do look fantastic, but they do have narrower tyres. Aftermarket wheels will allow you to run wider tyres and thus make the car faster. Increasing the rim size can make the car more willing to change direction, but it won't soak up the bumps quite as well, so I've stuck with the standard size. I've also fitted a front splitter for front downforce, a rear diffuser for front and rear downforce, and a custom rear wing. The Type A or B rear wings provide less downforce, but it is enough should you prefer how they look. The livery is a modernisation of the Nismo R33 LM that was entered into the 1995 24 Hours of Le Mans. You can find it by searching for Super Turismo as usual. For the setup, our main target is to reduce understeer. The 400R is very stable, and it's also front heavy, which makes it pretty unwilling to turn in. So, the rear downforce is fairly low by my standards. The front natural frequency is also quite low, and there's front toe in and rear toe out to generally loosen up the car's handling. As for the transmission, the gears are set fairly wide because the power curve drops off at high revs. This car desperately needs a sixth gear. I'm not a fan of Skylines. Actually, that's a lie. I'm not a fan of the R34. The R32 has grown on me recently. I love the R31 with its 1980s styling, and I've always had a bit of a soft spot for the R33. Kind of surprising then that I've never really given this car much of a go. A comment on one of my other videos mentioned the vague front end and general understeer. I figured it wouldn't be that bad, and then I drove the car, and you know, my first thought was, for Christ, this thing understeers. Still, it's very stable indeed, which is a fuck-sight better than the Volvo 240 from my last video. I'd rather have a car that understeers than a car that tries to send you backwards in a fireball through the gates of hell every time you look at the steering wheel. The 400R has a torque curve that looks more like a mountain, and unfortunately that means you don't gain anything from revving to the red line, so as nice as it sounds at the top end, it's best to short shift for better power delivery. As nice as this car is, I do highly recommend the standard R33 GTR, partly because it doesn't suffer with the same level of understeer, but also because it sounds even more thunderous. You may be wondering why I haven't featured the engine swap for this particular car, and the reason is it's barely any different. It gains 50 horsepower and weighs much the same, so the performance is in the same ballpark. On the upshot, you can copy-paste this setup onto the engine swapped car. In my hands, the 400R managed a 6 minutes 2. While it's been beaten by a few overpowered Porsches and the Lamborghini Gallardo, it's worth mentioning that this old Skyline has beaten the Impreza with the 911 turbo engine and the Chiron-swapped Corvette, among just about everything else. So, that was my setup for the Nismo 400R. I hope it helped. Thank you very much for watching. Please do like, subscribe, and punch me in the bell so that you get notified of future uploads. Take care of yourself, and ta-ra.